What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and if you're enjoying the content here on my channel, then make sure you hit the like button and make sure you hit subscribe so you can help decide what direction the content on my channel goes in the foreseeable future. Okay, so we are getting into the aftermath of Secret Empire, and God, man, I'm going into the weekend. I'm loafing this weekend. I am not really going to do anything if it doesn't require me to. I'm going to watch Netflix. I'm going to clean up my house. I'm going to have a good weekend. I don't know, maybe like cook some really nice dinners or something like that. But Secret Empire, admittedly, has been one of the most divisive stories that I've ever read in the history of comics. I mean, I was there when like the Clone Saga with Spider-Man, I was there when that whole thing happened. And like, it was interesting to see, but it was really more of like fans of Spider-Man. It wasn't like a split in the Marvel community. And it's been nuts to watch this whole thing unfold. But whenever we would do character explanations and we would talk about stories that would split the Marvel community, you guys are living through this in real time. Now, people are more vocal now than they've ever been because they have Twitter and Facebook and YouTube channels like mine and so on and so forth. But the idea here is that this story just really created a rift in the community and it was crazy. But if you've not had a chance to see my Secret Empire videos, I highly recommend that you go check them out just for the sake of understanding everything that's going on. But the idea, S.H.I.E.L.D. had created a cosmic cube. The cosmic cube had become sentient, and the result was that the cosmic cube was taken over by the Red Skull, and it was taught to believe in Hydra's ideologies. In response to this, at the request of the Red Skull, the cosmic cube altered the reality of Captain America Steve Rogers. It altered its past in order to make it out that Steve Rogers was a Hydra agent. And so with this altered reality, what Steve Rogers began to do was go through and basically implement his plan to allow Hydra to take over the United States, setting its sights on the world, and then using the cosmic cube to take over the entire universe. Now, of course, this led to this hunt for the cosmic cube in the sense that the cube had basically been shattered, and it was literally just this chase to find all these different shards. But what Marvel also gave us was an out. They gave us something called the Vanishing Point. And what we ended up learning was that with the cosmic cube becoming sentient, it also became terrified of what the world was like with Hydra ruling it. And so what the cosmic cube did is it created the Vanishing Point as a place where the memory of these various superheroes, specifically Captain America, with how he used to be, was basically held. And so what ended up happening is that at the end of Secret Empire, this memory was given a physical body. And this basically was the return of classic Captain America. And so classic Captain America fought against Hydra Captain America and the classic version won. And so in the aftermath of this story picks up with essentially what amounts to a healing process, the idea that the world is rebuilding. But the coolest thing about this is that this focuses on the question, who was right in Secret Empire? And how did things transpire? Did they transpire the way that we think they did? Or are we not remembering it correctly? And that's the crazy thing, because there is this prison that was created within the realm of the Marvel universe, at least this prison, as it's called the Shadow Pillar. Now, Shadow Pillar basically seems to be the Florence, Colorado Supermax. Now, for those of you guys who don't know, here in the real world, Florence, Colorado is home to a Supermax prison where people spend 23 hours out of the day in solitary confinement. They get 1 hour to basically go out and do their own thing, but it's housed the most violent individuals in the world, like Timothy McVeigh, for example. After blowing the federal building in half in Oklahoma City, he was housed in Florence, Colorado until he was executed. So again, there's all these different things, with regards to the comparisons between Marvel and the real world, but there's only one occupant of the Shadow Pillar prison, and that's Hydra Captain America. Now, of course, the classic version goes to see him, and this is probably one of the greatest conversations in the history of Marvel Comics. It's so cool the way this unfolds because it's the question, who was really right here? Now, the funny thing is that when this conversation initially opens, it's really just Hydra Cap saying, I know why you're here. Like, you're here for maybe some kind of vindication. You're here to basically say, hey, look, yeah, man, I was right, you were wrong. But the funny thing about this is that Hydra Cap makes the point in basically saying, I didn't break any laws. I didn't do anything illegal. And that's the funny thing about this is because remember, when he rose to power, it's not like he walked into the United States with an army of Hydra agents, assassinated the president, wiped out Congress, destroyed the Supreme Court. It wasn't The Handmaid's Tale and the rise of the sons of Jacob. It was him coming in and actually being given that power. And with that absolute authority, he conquered the United States. He was asked to be director of S.H.I.E.L.D. He was given the position, given that power by an external source. He never actually conquered anyone. He never actually killed anyone in terms of, his role or his rise to power. And that's what makes this so cool, is because in the face of this, classic Captain America says, well, we'll end up finding you accountable anyway. And Hydra Captain America's response is, yeah, because I'm not a friend. And this is really cool because myself and Comic Storian were talking about this, and he's starting a Secret Empire coverage, and you guys should definitely check it out. But we were running over this whole thing, and that's the crazy thing about it, is because Hydra Captain America is not wrong. If we look at the various characters who have gone through and who have engaged in actions that have resulted in the loss of life, you have characters like Magneto, who stood trial for his actions, but Magneto's not an Avenger. The Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, they were both Avengers. They've done some pretty heinous things, and they were never held accountable. Captain America is one of these guys who protects his own. And that's the reason why this is such a great, big, huge debate, is because the whole argument, the whole point that Hydra Captain America makes here is you're a guy who protects the people that you agree with. You protect the people that you like. You don't protect the people that you don't like. Not only that, it's also this equation being dragged in of what's the world like now? Is the world really a better place? Because in this instance, what Hydra Captain America says is, look, I was literally trying to make the world better. I saw this perfect world where there was no war. I saw this perfect world where there was no panic. There was no chaos. There was no famine. There were no children starving in the streets. There were no people robbing banks in order to make sure they could provide their own. That none of that stuff was there. I saw a perfect world. And then you came along and you took it. You took it away. And you basically returned the world back to the way that it used to be. And what he ends up saying is, you may believe that you've won, but you haven't won, because Hydra had this perfect world. For a brief moment in time, those who were loyal to Hydra saw this perfect reality. And the result is that when you took it away, they are now all the more desperate. It's tantamount to going to a starving man, giving him a sandwich, letting him have one bite, and then taking the sandwich away. He'll do almost anything to get it back in order to satiate that hunger that's aching him so bad. And so the ultimate argument here is that Hydra is going to be more desperate now than they've ever been, because they want that world that they saw for a brief glimpse in time. Now, what this also does is it transitions for a second to characters like the Punisher. And it's kind of cool here because with the Punisher, because of the fact that he basically says, look, I followed Hydra Captain America because he was Captain America, then once it was revealed that Hydra Captain America was basically a bad guy, that Punisher basically sort of turncoated, ended up going back to his normal way and just killing everybody who was Hydra. But that's the funny thing about this, is because until classic Captain America showed up, there was no reason for Punisher to believe that Hydra Captain America and classic Captain America were two different people. Now remember, this is not new. In the original Civil War story, one of the things that Marvel solidified is that Frank Castle fought in the Vietnam War because he wanted to be like Captain America. Frank Castle idolizes Captain America. And so because of that, whatever Captain America does, Frank Castle will go along with it. And so again, it's really a funny situation, because one of the things that I noticed with regards to the comments on Secret Empire is a lot of people were like, no way Punisher would join Hydra Captain America. But he would, because the actions of Hydra Captain America fall perfectly in line with what Frank Castle does. Frank Castle doesn't go around to like food banks and like donate money. He just goes around and kills criminals wherever he finds them. So he really is, in a lot of ways, exactly what it was that Hydra was fighting for at the time. The other half of this is the question of, did classic Steve Rogers make the world better by setting things the way they used to be? Under the rule of Hydra, sure, superheroes were killed, and sure, Inhumans were basically tossed in camps, but people were not afraid of their neighbors. People could leave their doors unlocked at night because they knew that everybody was too scared to break into their homes. Nobody committed any crimes whatsoever because the hammer of Hydra came down fast and it came down swift. And so because of this, with classic Steve Rogers setting things back to the way they used to be, now people go back to being scared again. People go back to being fearful of their neighbors, where people didn't have poverty, where we didn't have homelessness, because Hydra provided everybody with everything they needed. Well, then suddenly people are cast back down into homelessness. People are cast back down into poverty. Governmental corruption will run rampant once again. Money will be the defining factor on what it is that makes a person worthwhile. The world is not better than it was. But notice this. This is the exact same argument that we had when it came to injustice. The question is it worth giving up everything? Is it worth people basically living in fear of their government in place of living in fear of their neighbor? Is that a sacrifice that people are willing to make? And those are the opposing dichotomies of these two guys. As they argue, as they debate, that's what they're talking about. The question is, who came out on top here? Is the world a better place because of the fact that it's the way that it used to be? In this instance, Hydra Captain America basically says, at least I was honest about what I was. At least I came forward and said, I am an agent of Hydra. At least I came forward and I launched the entire campaign, and I told people, if you commit crimes, you will be dealt with harshly. I was the government operating in order to ensure a safer and secure America. With classic Captain America and with the Avengers, it's not that way. Remember, that was the whole basis behind behind the Champions. The Champions joined up. They formed their own group because they were tired of seeing the Avengers go into local towns, go into communities, fight these villains, and then just walk off and say, okay, everything's cool now. When people were watching their livelihoods come crashing down, when they were watching the homes they built destroyed because the Avengers were going through and fighting villains, and then the Avengers just leave, the people looked to Hydra as an alternative. The people welcomed Hydra because in the face of the Hydra rule, sure, it was dark, it was dystopian, but it also kept them safe and secure. They didn't have to worry about their homes being destroyed because the Avengers were fighting some villain, and when the fight was finished, the Avengers just left. And at the same time, no one appointed Captain America as a protector of the country. It's not like the Avengers are a government-sanctioned superhero team. The Avengers just formed one day. People basically, lauded them and said, yeah, sure, like we love them being here. We love them protecting us. But the argument of Hydra Captain America is, what's the difference between what you did and what I did? Because people celebrated me too. People said, yeah, Hydra's keeping us protected. The actions of the Avengers, the X-Men, the Maximum Security storyline, the Onslaught saga, all this has basically been these massive calamities because superheroes chose that they were going to be the protectors. And in the aftermath of these conflicts, they dusted their hands. They said, yes, the good guy's winning. They patted themselves on the back. They went to the bar, they had a beer, and they thought nothing of the people who were being affected. That was never their concern. You didn't see the Avengers rebuilding people's homes. You didn't see the Avengers funding individual people who lost their livelihood because the business they worked at was destroyed during a conflict. You didn't see that. And so in this instance, Hydra Captain America says, we're basically the same thing. You're vigilantes. You appointed yourselves as protectors. You do whatever you feel you need to do in order to keep the country protected. You protect your own. You protect Avengers because they're your friends. I do the exact same thing. So what's the difference? Now, the other side of this argument is classic Captain America comes along and says, because you imprison innocent people, because you took people who you deemed to be the enemy and you threw them in jail because you didn't like what they did. You went through back alley deals. You lied. You were duplicitous. You tricked people and you used my face to do it. And that's the huge crux of this argument. When S.H.I.E.L.D. gave Hydra Captain America absolute power, they didn't know they were giving it to a Hydra agent. Otherwise, they never would have. They thought they were giving it to classic Captain America, who had fought alongside the United States for years and years and years and years. That's the difference here, is that yes, Hydra Captain America made the country safer, but at the end of the day, he was sacrificing all the wrong things to do it. The argument that classic Captain America makes here is the same argument that I made, well, after I was done playing devil's advocate about Batman. But it was the argument that I made towards the tail end of the video, which you can find over at Comic Story and on the RNBE podcast, when we were arguing injustice. Sure, the world is imperfect. Sure, there are terrible things that happen to good people, and there are good things that happen to bad people. The difference between some totalitarian fascist regime imposing its own will and its own order, and people who were allowed to explore their own order and their own will, means that people under the role of freedom are allowed to get better. They're allowed to look at the way things used to be and say, we don't want to be there anymore. We don't want to cross that bridge anymore. We don't want to be in a world where we're afraid of our neighbors. We don't want to be in a world where we have to rob in order to feed ourselves or our children. We want to live in a world where we don't have to worry about those kinds of things. And so because of that, it's Hydra Captain America saying, yes, you instilled order, but it only would have lasted for so long. You're not going to live forever. And even if you were an enlightened dictatorship, even if you were benign in terms of how you dealt with the average person, who's to say the next person who took over your role would be the same? And so the idea here is that in a free society, people have the ability to better their own lives. That's the importance of it. People have the ability to evolve, to grow, to eventually move beyond individual desires and wants and think about what's best for the society. And that's the argument that classic Captain America makes. And so again, we're not really given a resolution on who's right or who's wrong. We're just kind of told these are the arguments that are out there. And so what ends up happening is ultimately, with the guards showing up and with classic Captain America leaving, we end up finding out that Hydra Captain America was right when he said Hydra's everywhere. Hydra will never go away, because we end up finding out that one of these prison guards is a Hydra agent when he says, "Hail Hydra," indicating that at some point along the line, Hydra Captain America will probably be let loose. But with that being said, guys, we're gonna go ahead and bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and yeah, I will catch you all later. Peace.